Welcome to Geek on Film with your host, Robbie Holmes. Hey folks, welcome to episode 40. This is Robbie. I'm solo again today, and we're going to be talking about a few television shows, a couple of movies, and then the main review this week of Beau Is Afraid. That is a movie that I don't think I can spoil, but we shall see. All right, let's get going. Hometown Takeover is a show that I really wanted to shine a spotlight on. My wife and I really love Hometown, and it's a show that takes place in Laurel, Mississippi with Ben and Erin Napier, and they are people who take care of and work on homes, mostly restoring old homes in Laurel. A couple of years ago, they started a show called Hometown Takeover, and that show was going to do the same thing for another town in America. HGTV opened submissions, and there was thousands of entries, and eventually they landed on Wetumpka, Alabama. So the entire first season is about renovating, fixing, tidying up, but making Wetumpka feel like it has life back. So they try to choose a town, I think, that their type of work would be really helpful in. Sometimes doing murals and doing things that are going to have an impact on the culture of the community. And then also they do some projects having to do with important people in the town or important businesses in the town. And I feel like the first one was really charming. It's really heartwarming and motivating to watch. And we were excited when we saw that the second season was starting. So season 2, we've watched the first 2 episodes so far. And in this, you have Erin and Ben have returned, but they've brought Jenny and Dave Mars from Fixer to Fabulous, which is another show on HGTV, and Fixer to Fabulous, and they actually spent time not re-asking for submissions this time, but reviewing what was there, and they decided to focus on a town in Colorado. So they're in Fort Morgan, Colorado, and there was this big event at the beginning, which was supposed to be like a final push for their possible opportunity to come to the city and Fort Morgan to be chosen. And it was really just them showing up to start to tell them that this is the town they're going to go with for the Hometown Takeover this season. And then the bigger surprise was that it was going to be the 2 couples from HGTV that were going to be running this. It's charming. It's really sweet. If you like HGTV type shows, you should give it a chance. It's 2 fun couples that really seem to care about trying to help people. And then beyond that, they bring other celebrities from HGTV onto this process. It's super fun. If you're interested, check it out. It's on Discovery Plus. And it's just really fun, easy watch. It's the kind of thing that near the end of a night where my wife and I will be like, what do we want to watch? And it's like uplifting and fast. And yeah, so a pretty warm thumbs up from me about this show and about Hometown in general. Let's move over to Secession. This week's Secession was Living Plus was the title. It's episode 6 of season 4. We end up with opening where we get to see Brian Cox return in a recorded vignette of him pitching the idea of Living Plus. So almost like for Investor Day. So they're about to have Investor Day for Waystar Royco. And what we end up with is a lot of back and forth with Roman and Kendall making moves. And Roman goes out to Hollywood to deal with the situation having to do with the movie that's not going so well. And we luckily subjected to having an amazing guest star show up, and Annabeth Gish as Joy Palmer. And he meets with her. She's supposed to be the head of the studio to talk about how bad this production's going. And also just, it was supposed to be warm and fuzzy and like, let's just get this fixed. Turns out they're obviously not like aligning very well. And Annabeth Gish's character Joy says something about like, Roman alludes to the fact that he's only there because he is one of the children of Logan Roy. And she makes a crack like, there's got to be a reason why he's here. It's obvious that he's earned it. And he takes offense and very quickly spins out. He's like, I could fire you. You know what? I have fired you. Yeah, it's great. Good luck. And so he comes back to the meeting that's going on in the Waystar offices in LA. And you have Kendall sort of holding court, talking about a concern they have about Lucas buying the company because of an interaction they supposedly had at the top of the mountain. So they're lying about what happened. What they should have been talking about is the fact that Roman lost his mind and couldn't hold it together and really possibly created SEC fraud. But they're alluding to the fact that things are concerning and that he is not stable, and that the offer is 50% cash, 50% stock. So they're worried about what Lucas's reputation and the way that he handles things could impact the stock value. So yeah, it's really interesting. We have all the elder guards, the elder statesmen at the table, Jerry and Frank and Carl, and Shiv shows up, and Kendall sits in Shiv's seat without realizing it's her seat. Or maybe he does, but her phone is sitting there. So you get this great moment where Shiv walks in and picks up her phone in a very annoyed way, and goes to the other side of the table. And after everything's said and done, the old guard has heard what Kendall has to say. And Shiv starts to break down the brothers. And it's like, this doesn't, you boys are not good at this. You're not cut out to do this. And she presses them, and eventually they collapse and admit that this didn't happen. And it's her basically alluding to the fact that, like, I see what you're trying to do here. I see you're trying to tank this deal, and it's not going well. And so Shiv leaves and ends up heading into a conference room where she has quote unquote scheduled her grief. Um, Tom comes in to the conference room because apparently he wasn't paying attention, I think, to who had scheduled it or if the conference room was in use. He finds Shiv in sort of a saddened state, and she eventually breaks down and admits that she sort of schedules time so she can take a breath. So alluding to the fact that she's scheduling her grief, and that's something that Tom even says. They have a very intimate connection, and and that sort of ends there. And then we go back to the boys, and you see Roman and Kendall talking, and Jerry comes in and basically, demands that Roman come and talk to her about this bad decision about firing the woman from the studio. They go back and forth, and Jerry, basically tells him this is a bad idea. And Roman says that this is something his father would have done. And she's like, "You're not your father." And there's a great line where he's like, "You have to, what you're doing is inappropriate. The way you're treating me is not right. I need you to admit that I'm as good as my father." And then she has this unbelievable line where she's like, "I have to say it or I have to believe it." And in that moment, he gets real angry and berates her a few times and then eventually fires her, which leads to Kendall and him walking together to hit the soda machine. And Kendall's like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, "Oh, we'll talk later." And they're standing by the soda machine. And finally, he's like, "Yep, I fired Joy, and then I fired Jerry." And Kendall's like, "Whoa, Jerry, like Shiv's godmother," which is like the greatest reference. Like, she's been a part of this company for a really long time, but the references, like, it's just so funny that is the way that Kendall zooms in on this. And then he's like, "Yeah, man, like, I got your back. Look at you firing stuff. Like, what are you gonna fire next? You gonna fire me? You know, fire Frank?" It's this really funny moment of Kendall seeing the little bit of chaos that Roman is, or the large amount of chaos that Roman is creating, but also has his back. Later, where Kendall is sort of taking over the position of being almost like Steve Jobsy at the investor day. He wants to pitch Living Plus, where during the entire episode, Kendall is working with the people who are doing the valuation of the company, or what the possible implications of Living Plus as a product are. We have a really fun moment where Greg is part of this, and Kendall's saying that, like, we could turn this into a tech play. And I love that Greg is just like, I don't know if houses or tech. We've had houses a long time. So Kendall's really pressing and pushing all sorts of reality distortion field conversations about what could happen, what this could provide, and how much it could make for Waystar Royco. Eventually, Shiv and Roman have a conversation, and she's sort of breaking him of the idea that Kendall's got this. And eventually, it was supposed to be the three of them doing the presentation about Living Plus. And finally, they both leave Kendall to sort of run with it. He's also gone to the stage and he's demanded that they make a living plus unit on the stage in 24 hours, like clouds over the top of it. And in the end, they try and fail. And also at the same time that it's failing, Roman tells him he's going to let him do it on his own. Overnight, Jeremy Strong's character Kendall has made flight jackets because this is about to take flight. So it does feel a little bit like my first pitch. He's got props. So we're at the investor day, and Kendall and Frank have a really disgusting conversation about, like, if you Frank really applies some pressure and says, like, if you do anything that puts me in a position to look bad, I'm going to squeal. And Kendall's like, this isn't the time. And they finally, we've seen Kendall break in the past where he's put under this kind of pressure, and he walks out on stage and kind of kills it. Like, it starts off cringy and awkward because he plays a video of his father, and he even says, like, out loud a couple of times, like, big shoes to fill, big shoes. And everybody in the back, the old guard and Shiv and Roman, are all watching this unfold. And the reality is just so brutal because we've seen Kendall implode, and this could be the beginning of that implosion, right? Like, it's almost like that Frank lit the wick that was already, really highly flammable because of everything that has happened with Roman stepping away and not wanting to be a part of it, and Shiv, and Kendall walks out on stage and starts awkwardly, and then eventually gives this really great pitch. It's terrible what he's offering. It's like, the idea is like cruises on Earth, but also we'll get access to billionaire medical stuff that other people don't have. So you might live longer, 10, 20, 50, who knows? This is a lot of, like, not lies, but like obvious untruths is the way I would put it. Like, things that you can't possibly quantify or that could possibly be there. And he makes some jokes about, like, well, you'll have access to the first content, like directors will come and pitch and show movies at the locations. And yeah, it's just unbelievably well done presentation, even if it is full of crap. And everybody in the back has to acknowledge it. They're slowly watching this unfold, and it seems to be going well. And Shiv gets a phone call from Lucas and says, like, I don't like this, end it. And she's like, I'm not going to drop a light on somebody, like, why don't you take some initiative and, distract from it maybe. And then Lucas makes a tweet having to do with, like, Nazis and the Holocaust about what's going on, apparently. And it gets a lot of reaction. So they cut to questions in the audience. And one of the first questions is from a journalist who was talking about Lucas's tweet. And Kendall handles it really well. He tap dances around it. He's like, he really doesn't shine a spotlight on it, handles it with grace and comedy, and sidesteps the implications and sidesteps anything that could affect the stock price. Because the whole reason they're doing this is that they want to drive the stock price over 192. So that way it's no longer possible for Lucas's company to buy out Waystar Royco. Kendall comes to the back, and everybody's like glad hatting him and patting him on the back. And you even have Frank come over and be like, this is great. I know. Great. And you have Hugo, like, saying, the king is dead. Long live the kings and the queen, awkwardly, because we have to acknowledge Shiv is also there. At one point, right before all this goes on, Shiv steps back out and calls Lucas and is like, maybe you've got too much heat on this and you're shining a spotlight on it. So it seems like we've got Shiv playing both sides, trying really hard to keep it's what the boys keep talking about, is like she's keeping all of her options open. And so is Tom is saying that too. And yeah, it's a really great episode. It's different than other episodes we've seen this season, but these episodes where you get to see Kendall finally become what he always wanted to be, which is sort of the techie, leader that everybody thinks is killing it. Whether or not he is, that's what he believes he should be. At least that's the way he comes across. I cannot believe how effective this show is at setting up all these characters. We know everybody's motivations. We know everybody's feelings. And there's so many intricate moving parts. My hope is that we get to see Joy come back, and that she comes back and sues the hell out of the company because of the firing. I think there's all kinds of really amazing side story that could be told here, but I also know that we're winding down. I think we've only got 4 episodes left, so I don't know how much we're going to get. But it was a really nice surprise to see Annabeth Gish show up in this show. That's it. I think the one last thing is that Shiv and Tom have so many individual interactions over the last couple of episodes. In this episode, they end up sleeping together, and they have a really honest conversation about the fact that Tom has always just wanted money. Like, he loves his watches, he loves this, and as a kid from the Midwest, he never thought he could have it, and he loves money, and it's really honest. And then, there's an allusion to Tom saying, well, like, would you live with me in a trailer park? Would you give up everything for love? And they have this like really awkward, like intense laugh, and then sincerity. And there's so much emotion and so many like vacillating motives these two characters seem to have. There's genuine affection, there's genuine intimacy, but then there's also all this other sort of underlying mistrust of humans, of protecting yourself. Jesse Armstrong has said in so many words that he feels like the entire show is those two. They encapsulate what the show is about. And some of the podcasts I've listened to have talked about, like, is this sort of what Jesse Armstrong's thesis is? It's either love or money, and you can't have both. And, we have this great moment where Jeremy Strong as Kendall is standing on stage talking to the ghost of his dead father. And, he uses that. He's like, I wish anything to have another week with my father. But then you think about his life, like, where's his ex-wife? Where are his kids? What kind of life does he have? It's unbelievable the amount of intricacy and well-defined nature of all these stories. Everybody feels real. And I think that's what makes Succession such a monster hit. You can put yourself in almost anybody's shoes. You hate most of them. They're all kind of bad people. It's really impressive. Again, no breaking any new ground here. Succession's amazing. But you should watch this episode for sure. I was really impressed with how they utilized all these characters. Even like a quick throw in by like Annabeth Gish adds a weight to those conversations. And Roman gets a chance to play with a really great scene partner. So we'll jump over to a couple of movies. Let's see. In preparation for Beau Is Afraid, I finally broke down and finished watching Midsommar. It's a movie I've started and stopped multiple times. It is an uncomfortable movie. I wanted to get a little bit more perspective on Ari Aster and how he approaches story. I've also started and stopped Hereditary, to be honest, multiple times. It's there's a discomfort that his shooting style and the way he tells stories, he seemingly loves to live in the discomfort of humanity. And even like the horror aspects of Midsommar are not direct horror. They're too much detail. They're lingering camera scenes where you watch something unfold and then it just stays there. There's not like a ton of fast cutting big monster. That's not what they're trying to accomplish, or he seems to be trying to accomplish. Midsommar, is a movie that it's beautifully shot. It's crazy in the places that it goes. The big one for me was I'm a huge Florence Pugh stan. I'm so impressed with everything she's done. So I really wanted to try to get through this. And Florence Pugh plays the main character, Danny, whose sister has been dealing with mental health issues. And the movie opens up with a shot inside the home of her parents. Her sister has sent an email that says, like, I can't do this anymore, and I'm taking mom and dad with me. And she has killed herself by asphyxiation from a car exhaust and killed both of her parents in the process. And that's how the movie opens. But it's not shockingly cut. It's just very matter of fact. And that's what I feel like Ari Aster does, is he puts a camera in places and lets you reckon with what you're seeing, and he leaves it lingering. So you get a chance to like feel the visceral nature of this death. It doesn't feel like it's fetishizing. It just feels like almost like an honest broker of what death looks like in his world. It's really off-putting. So Danny is dating a man named Christian, played by Jack Rayner, and he and a bunch of his friends are going to Northern Europe to get away to go to a Swedish midsummer festival. They are all in grad school trying to write their theses and trying to get PhDs. And you have this idea that maybe they are going to go study this midsummer festival and its traditions. Cut to Danny in the plane having a panic attack. Then we cut to them landing in Sweden and spending the day in the field, taking a bunch of hallucinogenics, and Danny having frightful nightmares, living nightmares, walking nightmares while she's tripping. And then the group, who are led by one of the people from this small town where this midsummer festival takes place, head on to that town, and weirdness ensues. They stay in like a lodge where everybody has like twin beds, and all around the room are these murals that are sort of telling the story of the movie that we're watching. It's really uncomfortable. Like, again, everybody's a little askew. All the conversations, you realize that there's a culture here of the young, which are sort of the innocents, and then there's the middle-aged, which are the doers and the livers, the people who are doing the actual service of the community, and then those who are older, but there's only a limited number of older. And then pretty quickly, there's a part of the festival is this a couple who's older sacrifice themselves so that way their life can end and the younger can have more resources, is what it feels like. And that is done by them jumping off the top of a hill and landing on stones. It's brutal. The first one is the woman, and we watch her land and crash. And again, this is where it's sort of like lingering camera. You know what's about to happen. She's gonna hit the ground, and we're gonna watch her body break. And he leaves it there so we can see that. And then the man jumps and doesn't die. So there's this ritualistic way that they end the life of someone who sacrificed themselves with these giant hammers. And again, really slowly unfolding, watching this unfold in front of our eyes. And we see our protagonist, Danny, losing her mind, and all the other non-community people really questioning everything. That's sort of just how the movie opens. There's all kinds of stuff that go on from that point forward. I will say, if that has intrigued you, the movie will just continue to intrigue you. I was really uncomfortable. So many times I literally tried to start and stop this movie, I think 4 or 5 times. And with Beau Is Afraid coming out, and I was thinking of doing it as the main review, I really wanted to try to finish this one. I also really wanted to try to finish Hereditary, and I couldn't convince myself to get there. I kept turning it on and being like, woof, this is creepy. And I really want to watch it because I know Toni Collette's amazing. But let's focus on this. Midsommar is a movie that I will never not be able to think about, and that says a lot. It also shows the steady hand and the ability to tell a story no matter what that story is, especially with the discomfort of humanity and the breaking down of society. And Ari Aster really understands how to make people feel viscerally something. I was really surprisingly moved by the end of the movie. Go watch it. If you're willing to be challenged and you are okay with some violence, this is a movie you should watch. I'm glad I finished it. I'm interested to see if I can get through Hereditary. That is the next one of his on my list. Okay, we'll stop for Midsommar there. I did watch John Mulaney's Baby J. So John Mulaney is back with a new comedy special. And it's hard to, it is a comedy special, but it is him talking through his intervention, everything that happened with him having to do with being a drug addict and how terrible things got and how bad the world is for him as an addict. And that, it is really astounding how funny he is and how serious this comedy special is about where he was and what he did and the terrible aspects of his life. It's an hour and 20 minutes. It goes by really fast. Mulaney is still one of the funniest comics on the planet, in my opinion. He's quick. He's charming. And he jokes about the fact that his perceived persona is it's like a prison. because he is that guy, or that's how people perceive him. That he's this like upbeat and funny and lighthearted. And he goes through like one of the things he talks through is his intervention, where six people were in his friend's apartment and six people were on Zoom, and he had just scored a whole bunch of drugs and went to dinner at his friend's house, or at least he thought it was. And he opened the door and it was just like, oh no, this is an intervention. He's like, that's how much drugs I was on. I didn't think this could be a party. The first thing I thought was like, this is an intervention for me. Yeah, it's moving and stirring, and a comedic look at a very vulnerable man telling you how bad his life was. If you haven't seen John Mulaney's work in the past or gotten a chance to see him live, he is, I think, one of the best comedians working today. And I'm so glad that he seems to have made it through this really challenging time and come out the other end of it in a better place. I would suggest it. It's on Netflix. Oh yeah, Midsommar I think is on Showtime at this point. It's bounced around. It's been on a bunch of different services. But go watch John Mulaney's Baby J. It's poignant, amusing, funny, and sad. And that leads us to our main review, which is probably the right set of adjectives. So this is a very long movie. It's 2 hours and 59 minutes. Beau Is Afraid, and it is the story of Beau, written and directed by Ari Aster. And Beau is played by Joaquin Phoenix. So the movie is really broken into four major sections. And it's sort of like each one of them is a self-contained aspect of Beau's life. And Beau Is Afraid opens with Beau's birth. We get a chance to hear his birth happen, see a little bit of it. It's and we hear his mother, really concerned why he's not crying, why he's not what's wrong with the child. So I think we're supposed to walk away with the fact that like Beau has been afraid from the second he exited the womb. And we then cut to him in like a therapy session where his therapist is played by one of the most amazing that guys you'll ever meet. He's in, everything. Stephen McKinley Henderson plays his therapist, and he comes in to talk about what's going on, that he's going to visit his mother, and the therapist prescribes new medication and really leans on the fact that like you have to take this with water. And he goes home, and getting home is as scary as almost anything in any horror movie. Beau has to sprint past like all kinds of people who are in front of his home, including a guy who's got like tons of tattoos, eyeballs are tattooed, a naked man wielding a knife. There's just chaos everywhere. This is the sort of absurdist take, I think, on the fear of living in society. I was really the first section of the movie was probably my favorite in the whole movie. I was really impressed with how much detail he could pack into all these scenes and how many more things could make Beau afraid. Everywhere he looked, there was another aspect of fear that was unfolding. We end up with Beau trying to make it to his mother's house. He oversleeps because of his new meds. He's about to leave and he forgets his dental floss, and he puts his bag in the hallway and his key in the door, and he comes back inside to grab his dental floss. And when he comes back, his bag is gone, his keys are gone. So we now have him not able to leave his home, and he calls his mother, and she answers, and they talk for a little bit, and she's like, "Are you on your way?" And it seems a little control-y, but also a little excited that he's coming home. We realize that she's had enough of his shenanigans, and she pivots pretty quickly into like, "Well, you'll have to deal with it. I guess I'm not going to see you. I can always come to your house if it's easier." And Beau sits scared in his home after the call ends, and he takes his medication and goes to take water, and there's no water left in the bottle he has. And then it turns out that they've turned the water off in the building. Oh yeah, and when his suitcase and his keys disappear, the guy who works in the building walks past him and basically says like, "You're fucked." Just so weird. Could be that guy threw his bag down the garbage chute, but now he's panicking because he's taking this medication that his therapist told him he had to take with water, always with water, and he has no water because there's no water coming out of the faucet. And he eventually makes his way across the street to a bodega where he opens a bottle of water and drinks it and goes to pay, and his credit card is denied, and he has to then try to figure out how to pay for this out of what he has in coins and bills in his pocket. And he almost doesn't have enough, and then he realizes that he had to leave the door open. We watched him leave the door open to get back into his apartment building, the front door, and the people on the street that he ran past to make it to his apartment start fluttering into his building. And now they have made their way into his apartment and he can see it from the outside. So Beau climbs up the fire escape and falls asleep outside of his apartment. And we wake up in the morning with him, somebody doing work on the outside of the building. He's got dust all over him. And he goes back inside and his apartment is destroyed. He closes the door, locks it, goes in to take a bath. And as he goes to take a bath, there's a man hovering at the top of the ceiling, holding onto the walls, and eventually there's also a brown recluse spider apparently loose in the buildings. Just everything that can make you scared. And the brown recluse is on a person who's hovering up above, and then that guy falls into the tub with Beau. Just absolute absurdity across the board. I'm only going to talk about the first portion of this movie, I think. Maybe the first two. Beau eventually fights his way away from this man, kicks him out of his apartment, and goes to call his mother. And the phone is answered by a man who says he's a UPS driver. And you realize later that the voice of that UPS driver is Bill Hader. And he's describing the fact that there's a woman dead near the cell phone. A chandelier fell from the ceiling and seems to have crushed her head. And they are going back and forth in this very like awkward and amusing way. And finally, Bill Hader's character, the UPS guy, tells him like, "Why don't you hang up and call back? Maybe you called the wrong number." Obviously, he didn't call the wrong number because he called the number stored in his phone. But he calls back, and Bill Hader answers the phone. And he's like, "I'm sorry." So we see that his mother is dead, and now the movie unfolds. He leaves his apartment trying to get away, trying to get to his mother. He eventually ends up getting hit by a car, and he wakes up in the house of a doctor and his wife, Roger and Grace, played by Nathan Lane and Amy Ryan, and their daughter, played by Kylie Rogers, plays Tony, the daughter. Again, we're back into absurdity. We see that he's been stabbed. He got stabbed by the naked guy with the knife before he got hit by a car. They say they're taking care of him. He now has a ankle bracelet on that seems to be tracking him. In the house is also a man called Jeeves, who apparently is a veteran who is suffering from PTSD that their son served with. And he is almost nonverbal. He's like very aggressive. They're giving him a lot of drugs. This Nathan Lane's character of Roger is sort of this like very hyper positive person. He's going to take Beau to get to a plane or a train to get home to his mother's home as soon as he's ready and healed enough. The movie has so much absurdity going on. It is a little bit long, so I think I'm going to stop my review there. The fourth act gets to his mother's home, and then all kinds of unbelievable acting takes place. Really nice unfolding in that sequence. But I would say if you like absurd storytelling and are open to a meandering story with great actors, letting things breathe, and hitting non-traditional storytelling techniques, this movie might land for you. I found it to be a little bit too out there for my taste. I will say I have thought about it a lot. I think that is the one thing I can say about Ari Aster is that I don't always agree with what he's trying to show you, but I know that he is doing it well, effectively, because it sticks with me for a long time. I'm really impressed by what he was able to pull off in this movie, but also that he was able to convince A24 to let him make this movie. This feels like a movie about Beau's relationship with his mom and how complicated that is, and how much it revolves around fear and guilt and jealousy. Yeah, it's a crazy movie. It is beautiful. I saw it in a theater. I think I would have liked to have seen it in IMAX. I hear the IMAX viewings of this were really beautiful. I will probably keep giving Ari Aster a try and testing out what he does next. I'm interested to see what his next pull is. And I know this is a weird movie review because this is a weird movie. I'm going to end it there. I think you should give something he's made a chance, whether it's Hereditary or Midsommar or Beau Is Afraid. And you should pay attention to what Ari Aster is doing. I think he is heading in a direction that a lot of people are recognizing that he might be the auteur of the moment. Scorsese says that he's one of the most important voices in international cinema, and said so after watching a showing of Beau Is Afraid. So that's been me. I'm Robbie the Geek everywhere online. Hopefully John will be back soon. John is my partner in crime, John Hosch. He's off in the Tony-nominated Life of Pi on Broadway. Congratulations to him and the whole crew. You can find him everywhere as John Hosch, JONHOCHE. geekonfilm.com, and we're geekonfilm.com on Instagram and Twitter. It would be really helpful if you gave us some ratings and reviews. We're always open to some feedback. Feel free to reach out to us on social media. And until next week, probably going to be Guardians of the Galaxy, folks. Here we go. First big Marvel tentpole movie of the year. I look forward to chatting with you then. Have a great week. Bye-bye. This has been a Geek on Film podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.